Laney here. Realized that the last three items on the study guide are parts that we haven't covered yet, so I'm just going to quickly go through them with you in this video so that you are able to be fully prepared for tomorrow's test. And yeah, I believe we last left off talking about politics. Just to recap here, the church should be involved in politics because for the church, its teachings are good not just for people in the church. And so it has a duty to help inform, especially in a democracy, how the political world will be set up or how decisions will be made politically because it has access to the truth. So, that said, the church should be involved in politics in a particular way. The church is not here to tell us who to vote for. Rather, it's here to tell us what to vote for, given what is true and what is false about the world and human nature, etc., etc. So things can be framed in terms of issues, and connected to that, there are certain candidates who support certain issues, but the focus can't be on the candidate themselves. And the church's job is to inform and guide our consciences, not compel. There's a great document called Forming Consciences for Faithful Citizenship that the U.S. bishops put out every election year, and it tells us how our job is to always vote our conscience. We cannot violate our conscience ever, especially when we vote. And the job of the church is to help us form our conscience, help us inform our conscience, and to guide it to the truth so that our consciences aren't automatically always going to give us the best decision or give us what's right and true. It's a process over time of sharpening the blade that is our conscience, and at the end of the day that we can only vote according to our own conscience. We can't be forced or compelled to vote a particular way and violate our conscience by doing that. And then more broadly, issues for the church should be framed when we're talking about politics and policies that will affect many people, including non-Christians. It's best to frame things in terms of natural law. So that's things that are true for everyone, and you don't need to have faith in order to see it. So by reason alone, things that we can tell to be true and false, understandable by Christians and non-Christians. And so the most prominent example in U.S. politics today of natural law are abortion and gay marriage. For the church, the natural law argument against abortion is murder is always wrong. So cold-blooded killing of an innocent is always wrong. Of an innocent human person is always wrong. Babies in the womb are still human persons because embryology, the science of babies in the womb, tells us that the human person begins at conception. Therefore, any intended killing of that child in the womb is murder. Therefore, abortion is wrong. I mentioned God, not at all. I mentioned faith, not at all. Someone who is coming from a completely different faith tradition can still assent or agree to that idea. Natural law. Boom. The gay marriage one, it's basically marriage is one man and one woman because that is the only type of union in which procreation as a principle is possible. The thing that makes marriage different is that it has the potential for a family life of procreation. And so that relationship gets a special status that we call marriage. If you try and renegotiate the boundaries or limits or definitions of that marriage relationship, then it would necessarily include types of relationships that anyone could, without faith or without believing in God, would still say are wrong. So if we say, it could be two people of either gender or any gender, then it's then why just two? Why not three or four? The thing that makes marriage special is that, according to natural law, it's the only type of relationship in which procreation, even as a principle, if not a fact, given infertility, It's the only relationship in which procreation as a principle is possible. Therefore, natural law tells us that should be the definition of marriage. You can agree with it, you can disagree with it, obviously. But for the church, this is how it approaches things. This is why it gets framed sometimes in terms that don't seem natural to us, or don't seem intuitive to us or familiar to us. It's because the church is trying to discuss these things in natural law so that it could be understandable and agreeable to Christians and non-Christians alike. Evangelization. This is the last Roman numeral. Evangelization is the proclamation of the good news of Jesus Christ. This is both in words and in deeds, or in witness. There's a famous line attributed to St. Francis, although it's doubtful he ever said it himself. Preach the gospel at all times. When necessary, use words. That quote shows us the importance that witness or deeds, the way we live our lives, it's more important than the things that we say in terms of preaching the good news, although words are necessary as well. So evangelization, the church is called to evangelization. Jesus says, his last words in the Gospel of Matthew are, or before he ascends, are, go forth, teach all nations to observe all that I've commanded you, baptizing them in the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. And behold, I am with you until the end of the age. So it's the missionary mandate. So, the church and the world, the relationship is the church is in the world trying to save the world by telling it about Jesus Christ, who saved the world. There are 3 different situations needing evangelization according to the church today. First off, people in places that have never known or accepted the gospel. This would be places in Asia, the more remote areas of the world. Back in the day, when the gospel first came to us, this described most of the world, right? And with the discovery of the New World in the 15th, 16th centuries, this was a huge impulse, right? Like, oh my goodness, an entire half of the world, a whole new world that has never known the gospel. We must preach it to them. We have the duty to preach it to them. They have the right to hear it. That said, even places that already live the gospel, the holiest people on earth, the holiest country, the holiest, ethnic group, or however you want to make the division, take the holiest group of people, they still need to be evangelized on a constant basis, because we always need to remind ourselves of the gospel. We always need to be in touch with it, and day after day accepting it in our lives more and more. So this is why we have preaching every Sunday. And then lastly, this is the new one. People/places that used to live the gospel or accept the gospel, but then abandoned it. This would be most of Western Europe and America, most of the developed world or industrialized world. This is a relatively new situation in the history of the church, where large parts of the population that had been historically Christian are abandoning the faith, and it requires a new mentality, a new type of preaching, a new type of witness to reach this population. It's what we call the new evangelization. There we go. New evangelization. I have some videos here. If you're curious about what the new evangelization looks like, they're from Father Robert Barron. He did a whole video series as a follow-up to his classic DVD series, Catholicism. This is a shorter one called The New Evangelization. These are 2 preview clips. I'm going to just email you the link to the Prezi, and if you're interested, you can view those on your own. The book talks about how to evangelize. This is a very cool section. One of the best pieces of advice comes again from Father Robert Barron. Lead with joy. He talks about Cardinal Timothy Dolan, the Archbishop of New York, and how he's a great evangelist because he is just always ridiculously jolly looking. And he intrigues people with his great happiness, and that leads them to investigate further the claims of the church. Maybe there is a difference that being Catholic makes. So lead with joy, follow with the rules and the truth and the exclusive claims and all that stuff. That can come later. You lead with joy, you lead with beauty. Boldness and respect. This is an incredibly hard balance. Boldness, we can never be afraid as Catholics to be able to stand up for the church, for Jesus Christ, to preach the truth of the gospel to anyone who needs to hear it or is ready to hear it. We can never shy away from it. At the same time, we must always respect the persons that we're preaching to. So that's a tightrope and with very little safety net. And many people are bad preachers because they've got the boldness, but they lose the respect. Many people are bad preachers because they have the respect, but they are too shy and they lack boldness. So the perfect evangelist will allow the gospel itself to do the work for them in terms of making people feel at ease, but also kind of disrupted in their daily life. Jesus' message is just troubling in itself, and it requires this very heavy decision. And a lot of poor preachers, poor evangelists will think they need to heighten the drama or something. And the drama is already there. The message contains all the drama there needs to be. All you have to do is present the gospel while showing respect for the person who's hearing it. Very few people do this very well. I think on my best days, I begin to walk a couple of steps on that tightrope, and then I usually have to, if I don't fall down completely, I have to go back and find my footing. It's not easy. Technology. This has always been part of the church, even before technology. The way that we use it, we usually mean computers and the internet and mass media. Even before the days of mass media, technology was a thing for the church. Think using the written word and relying upon it. So Paul's letters. He was able to use the technology of Rome's highway system and being able to travel safely in the peace of Rome to deliver these letters. Then the development of the scriptoriums in the monasteries to preserve the sacred writings as well as the best of culture. And every advance in technology has been accompanied by the church trying to figure out the best way to use it. As soon as TV became a thing, you had Bishop Fulton Sheen winning Emmys for his program Life is Worth Living, where he would give these weirdly compelling theology lessons on mass media, to an audience of millions, many non-Catholics included. It's just a weird thing to think about for me. And nowadays with the internet, two of my favorite sites in terms of the new evangelization, strangenotions.com. I may have shown you guys this last year. It's just a digital meeting ground for Catholics and atheists to debate one another in good faith, and just really high quality stuff from both sides, Catholic and non-Catholic, believer and non-believer. And then Catholic.com, this is just Catholic Answers, the radio show. This is their website, and so they have a ton of resources for Catholics to be able to help defend their faith and preach and evangelize. And lastly, these two things, which I'm going to group together here: personal holiness and being awesome at living life. Because at the end of the day, being holy means you're just awesome at living life. Again, like St. Francis's dictum, preach the gospel at all times when necessary, use words. The holiness of your life, the awesomeness that you have at living life, it should be compelling to people in this way that they ask you first, like, what, so do you do this whole church thing, or what's your thought on God? Or they will be wanting to know, even if they don't ask you directly, right? They'll like eat around the edges first. They want to know what's going on at the heart of your life. Mother Teresa, the story of her, the sight of her, was able to inspire people to travel across the entire world just to join her in the missionaries, the missionaries of charity. And this great saints have this magnetic effect where even if they aren't great speakers themselves, or even if they don't have that great of personalities in terms of being able to command a crowd or guide a community, people are just like drawn to it. They want to follow it. They want to have what you have. And so that's the most effective way to evangelize, is just to be evangelized yourself. All right. I am available via text tonight. I'll be helping out at the Cathedral for the RCIA thing. If you have any questions over the study guide, the best way to get in touch with me is to text me 957-1509, area code 402. I think that's my number. Let me double check. Yeah, 402-957-1590. Yeah, feel free to text me any questions you have as you prepare for the test. And have a great night. Mullaney out.